I think the best way to describe it is Salt Lake is what everybody assumes Denver is.
Okay.
Have you ever been out to Denver?
No, but I have a lot of preconceived ideas about what it is.
Yes. So when you go out there, everybody thinks that it's in the Rockies and it's, these beautiful mountain views and easy access and all that. And it's not. It's like an hour away from the mountains. You just see them out on the horizon. With Salt Lake, you're like right in the thick of it. And so beautiful. The city's really clean. You've got a lot of really good people that are here. So it's a great place to be, especially for me with a lot of young kids. It's a really good place to raise a family.
I've heard that, yeah, like the quality of living for a family is great.
Yeah,
I can't
that's
imagine
awesome.
having kids especially in the city of Chicago. That's definitely not on the agenda for me. So I have to behave.
That would be quite the adventure.
Oh, I know. I mean, I don't like to do a super formal intro. I really just like to get straight into it. I'm sure a lot of people listening will already be familiar with who you are. I would love to know, when it comes to coaching and having clients as a style guide for men, what would you say the problems are that men come to you with?
This is such a good question because I've been doing this for like 13 years now, and I've worked with a lot of different business coaches, and I don't think that I quite fall into the same space that a lot of guys do, where you don't come to me with this like hair on fire, like really emotional type problem that clothing is going to solve. And I think another one of the things that makes it kind of challenging is there's not this like direct ROI where it's like my style improved and all of a sudden I made 100K more this year, or I couldn't get a date and now all of a sudden that I dress better, every woman says I didn't like you, but because you dress better now I'm interested in you. Like it's much more indirect than that, right? And so the problem that I solve with most of these guys is that they're the ones who attained a really good level of success in their career, in their relationships, but they find that there is an identity disparity, that how they see and perceive themselves, what they see in the mirror, what they see on social media or something else, there's a dissonance between what they're seeing or what they're presenting to other people versus what they actually are or what they're building themselves into becoming. And so it squashes that dissonance and actually creates congruence between who they are on the inside and who they are on the outside. Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely. When they first come to you, how aware are they of that dissonance? Or is that something that they kind of go on a journey, they start watching your videos, they start getting into style, and then they realize, this is what was bothering me, but I didn't realize it?
It's definitely more the latter. When I first started doing this stuff, I spoke a lot more to guys that were already interested in style. I spent a lot of time building a YouTube channel, a lot of time in kind of like the menswear world of the 2010s. And when my business actually started to take off was when I shifted away from that and spent more time just focusing on guys who were into more just kind of like traditional masculine self-development. And if they could see that I was somebody that was worth listening to in that space because of my business or my relationships or my hobbies or my physicality or things like that, and then I was somebody who said, yeah, you should probably pay attention to your style too, then they go, oh, okay, well, this guy seems legit in a bunch of other areas. Maybe he's right. Maybe I should start paying attention to this. And so it was kind of easing them into that idea, and then they get interested enough to go, actually, this makes sense. I want to work with him on this now.
Yeah, I also found with my content journey, when you start off and you're making like the classic, as you say, the menswear 2010s kind of era, that really was an era that was started by Aaron and Antonio and all of that kind of stuff. It becomes also very hard to keep making those videos without driving yourself crazy. And I found when I started introducing more of a lifestyle, and now I think I make videos kind of for a younger version of myself and just take people on that journey, it's not only more rewarding for us, but I think it actually explains the whole concept of why style is important and how it fits into all of that as well. I've also found that my personal style has become more relaxed over time.
Right.
And I know you have this concept of the gentle geek, is it? Or gentle nerd? Yeah. Yes. Let's talk about your gentle dork phase and how did you get into that?
So I first started really getting into men's style after reading The Art of Manliness. I think a lot of guys kind of got introduced into a lot of the men's space, 2009, 2010 from Brett and Art of Manliness. And I found his articles about shaving with a straight razor or safety razor and all of that, and it really kind of brought that in. I've always been pretty interested in clothing. Like, I grew up as a punk rock kid, and like the green Liberty spikes and the battle jacket and all of that, and so, I mean, it was the perfect storm of my interest in clothing and fashion in general. A lot of what Brett was talking about, and then really kind of like the influx of like Mad Men and how everybody was in the Mad Men era of suiting and everything else. And I went hard. Like, I was buying vintage fedoras and wearing driving gloves and wearing suits at work. I worked at a bank, and, even the VPs were walking around in polo shirts and khakis, and I was wearing 3-piece suits and just thought I was totally killing it. I think a lot of it was that, the 20th century relationship with style was that more formal meant better. And if you wanted to dress better, if you wanted to have more style, then, if everybody's in t-shirt and jeans, then you would be in a button-up and khakis. Or if everybody's in a button-up and khakis, then you would go to a suit. And so there was this very kind of like limited paradigm of formality meant good style. And obviously, we've seen a big cultural shift and move away from that. But I see a lot of guys who are not developing their masculinity in any other regard when it comes to their presence and their gravitas, their ability to stand up for themselves and hold good boundaries or ask for their needs to be met. When it comes to their ability to pursue adventure or be assertive or take chances, they're not developing any of those things, but they dress like Cary Grant and think that by putting on the Cary Grant costume, it's going to all of a sudden get them perceived and treated like, and in a way, it's going to help them embody the masculinity of somebody like Cary Grant or Frank Sinatra or whatever else. And the problem is rather than the clothing coming in and making up that deficit, it actually just shines a brighter light on the disparity that exists. And so you end up looking worse as opposed to it making up for it, making you look better.
It's interesting because when I started my my program and my community and doing more coaching, I thought everybody was going to come to me for style advice. But what I actually had was guys that, as you say, dressed like Cary Grant, but realized, I don't feel like him though. People don't treat me like that. I don't speak like that. I haven't had a date in 3 years. So we ended up working on everything else. And I think that, it can be maybe a lever for some people that gets them into other forms of self-development. And it can be a confidence boost as well.
Totally.
I suppose, when does somebody know that they are in this gentle dork category? What are some things that people might say to them?
Yeah, that's the problem, is they don't. And a lot of times, even for me in my own gentle dork phase, I totally thought I was killing it. And it wasn't until 5 years later that I'd started developing these other aspects of myself that I could look back at pictures and go, oh man, that was so bad. Like, I was just, the suit was a costume. And so I don't want to be too disparaging of it, because if it functions like it did for me and like it does for a lot of your guys in your community, where it's the gateway to other versions of self-development, then it's great. And it should be done that way. But if you find yourself thinking, I don't need to develop myself in other arenas because I dress well, or you're overly focused on just your appearance, then that's when I think you get stuck in that gentle dork territory.
Yeah. What would you say, if somebody is in that position now, what would you say should be the next step for them on their journey? What's the new area to focus on if they're not doing anything else?
Go to the gym, and even better if you can, train a combat sport. Yeah.
Great. I wanted to talk a little bit more about, as you were saying, it's when you try and do, style coaching, or you do style coaching, a lot of the typical business structure of, having a service business, having a coaching business, it's different. People don't have the same objections or the same problems. It's kind of weird. How are you able to really put a price and a value on the coaching that you do?
That's a fun question. Because I spent a lot of time living in my own limitations, as far as the what I earned and what I felt like would be worth it to pay. I think one of the things that was kind of the most fascinating for me as I started to develop pricing strategies and things like that is I just spent a lot of time with guys who were coaches in other arenas that were more of those pain points, whether it was dating coaching or business coaching or fitness or whatever else. And I remember the first time that I had a really big paradigm shift is one of my friends. In fact, this was actually at a dinner at StyleCon, the event that Aaron and Antonio used to host. And it was one of the guys, one of the fellow speakers, Mike, who was there. And he said, dude, you should try this price anchoring thing, where he's like, you set up 3 different tiers of prices, and the top one is so exorbitantly insane that nobody ever pays for it. And it's just set up to, to just kind of like make everything else look relatively accessible in comparison. I was like, okay, let's try it. And I had like 50% of my sales that year come from that insanely high price, or what felt like an insanely high price at the time. So it was like, oh, okay. So like there is a real value perception here. I just didn't see it because of what my own limitations were. And so it's just been a lot of like constant trial and error, or hiring my own coaches, or experimenting with different things. And that's what's so fun is I've been doing this long enough that I've got such a suite of things that, you could start off at a $27 course that's done by yourself, or you can hire me to work with you for $20K for an entire year and coach you through the whole year and all the different seasons and kind of like the whole spectrum in between. And it just depends on what the guy's needs are and what they feel like is a good value for them.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those jobs where there is no real precedent. I mean, people weren't doing online coaching of any form 15 years ago. Realizing that it can work for style or self-development or something that's more of like a soft ROI, I would say. And then I come from maybe a similar background to you of, I had a regular 9 to 5, started doing this as a passion project. For me, it was YouTube. I know you started off with a blog. And then you go, okay, this is a business now. But I never have been taught how to run a business.
Right. How do I make it a business?
And just figuring it out along the way. Yeah.
Has it been a fun process more than a frustrating one for you? Or do you feel like it's been more growth pains than spurts?
No, I love it. I would not want anything different. Like there's no level of stability or 9 to 5 job that I would trade for doing this. I think I've learned fairly well to separate business stress from personal stress as well. And I've had to try out a lot of different approaches. At first you are just working all of the time, especially when you're trying to get it off the ground and you still have a 9 to 5 job. Time off does not exist.
Nope.
And then when I quit my job, I think I probably took my foot off the gas a little bit, honestly. And then you get back on it, and then you do too much. And so now I really try and actually structure it. I work 48 hours a week. I work 8 days, 6 days a week. I take Sundays off. When work stops at 6 or 7 o'clock, I'm pretty good at just... Yeah, because I think also if you're a solo entrepreneur, you're in a small business, you need to be both the CEO and the strategist and the person doing the grunt work.
Yep.
Whereas if you work a 9 to 5, somebody else is doing the strategy for you. You just got to go and execute. So I find that, for me, it's cigars. I'll have a cigar pretty much every night and sit outside. And I'm not really trying to think about work, but I do. And that tends to be where most of my progress comes from.
I love it. Yeah, very similar.
I would love to know, what does your kind of typical working day look like? How do you structure it?
So mine's a little bit different now because I've got 7 kids and I have them a little under 50% of the time because I'm a single dad when I have them. Mm-hmm. And so I've had to structure mine a lot. Even prior to getting divorced, I was very active and involved as a dad. And so I was doing well enough and had it set up well enough that I was only putting in about 30 hours a week, and I had Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off every week. So I could spend a lot of time just being active and involved as a father. Now, things are very different, and so it's a lot of time that's being spent in trying to find new approaches and see new ways that I can offer either help to existing clients or work with brands or things like that. And so the current focus and the current effort has been a lot in marketing and outreach, which has been fun. I think, you get this. You have to develop so many different skills as you go through this, whether it's the social media aspect or the sales aspect or the delivery or the coaching or the strategy or anything else. And I think what's fun is I find that, again, it's been more than a decade that there's just peaks and valleys as far as, okay, now I really need to focus on this area. Okay, that's doing really well, but now it reveals a gap in this one. And so there's just always kind of a constant focus. But I would say on a day-to-day, for me, the biggest kind of like hard constraints are I make it a point to get in some physical movement every day. I make it a point to get in some marketing every day. And then I do make it a point to get in some good downtime at the end of the day every day too, just so I can come at it more fresh the next morning.
Yeah. What does downtime look like for you?
It depends, now obviously when I have my kids, that's very different and it's a lot more relaxed. Dating has been a good venue for me to kind of pursue some of that. A lot of times actually my downtime is also my physical time. I've been involved in like boxing, Muay Thai, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu a lot over the years. And so that's kind of my place where I can go and just be very present as opposed to focusing on the business and things like that. So it's a lot of time in the gym and that type of stuff.
Yeah. You can't think about anything else when you're in the boxing ring.
It's so nice. It's so nice to have that forced presence. It's great.
Ryan actually gave me some really good advice about dating because I'd been kind of struggling between, well, I wouldn't even say balancing was the word. I just felt like when I was dating, I was not neglecting, but I wasn't being as good as I could have been in other areas of my life. And work is obviously the one I care about most. But when I would not date at all, obviously it kind of sucks,
Mm-hmm.
And
loneliness
he said, like,
is real.
Yeah, but he said you need to just learn how to set boundaries with it. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be an act of discipline on your part, just like, you've got good discipline with your working life, you've got good discipline with sleep, working out, whatever. You need to be able to say, I don't go on dates these nights of the week. I end the dates by this time. I spend a limited amount of time on dating apps or looking for dates. And as a result, the women that you do date will want you more because
absolutely
we all want things that we can't have. And so far, it's actually been very good advice.
I love it. Well, and Ryan's done. We're friends, and it's been fun to see. He's just a year ahead of me as far as like going through a pretty rough, fairly public divorce and kind of getting back in the dating field, and it's been fun to see his mindset and skill development and a lot of those aspects from a dating perspective. He and I actually have a call. I'm doing some coaching with him, and he and I have a call coming up tomorrow. So
awesome.
He's fun to work with. Yeah.
What's it been like for you getting back on the dating scene?
Well, it's certainly very different than what it was. I was married for 13 years and was out of the dating pool for a little while even before that. I have no idea what it was like to deal with dating apps or a lot of the... Okay, the observations that have been the most interesting to me are kind of like in some cases, the ease of dating apps, and in other cases, the like very typical male frustration with dating apps. It's very interesting to deal with like the hypertherapy focused aspect of dating where everything is about attachment styles and like personality disorders or all this other type of stuff that I think a lot of people get very focused on. And it's like, no, that's just like a quirk, but that person's that's just part of them being an individual. Like we don't have to pathologize everything. And I think a lot of people do that as a way to self-soothe and to not have to take risks. It's fun though. I mean, I get how guys can kind of like, I miss being married. I love being married. I'm definitely like a monogamous type of guy, but I can certainly understand how addictive the validation of juggling a few different partners at a time can be for a lot of guys. I have a lot more kind of like, more of an understanding of that than I think I would have ever had otherwise.
Yeah, I think if you don't set those boundaries, it's very easy for you to always want to do more swipes, go on more dates, have more sex, whatever it is. It's like, when is enough here?
Right.
If you're not,
it can be a binge. Yeah.
Yeah. Or if you're not having success, it's like, I just want to keep putting more into it and throwing more on the fire. Or I do also find some guys that I work with also they've tried the dating apps. It didn't really work for them. They don't meet many women out and about, and they've just like pushed that area of their life to one side.
Yeah.
Do you get that with some older guys? Yeah, go ahead.
Because the thing that I'm finding is an interesting challenge is being a solopreneur and working exclusively with men. I don't have the network that a lot of guys typically have. And so what are you doing outside of working just with the apps in order to be able to find a kick? Because my best dates have come from connections, not from being on the app. So tell me what that looks like for you.
That's a good question. I've been talking about this with my other friends who are entrepreneurs as well. And even if you just work from home, actually, similar. you have to make a deliberate effort when you finish work to go out and meet people. And for me, that's not necessarily like going out just to meet women. It's about going out with my friends in places where that may happen. Mm-hmm. So when I think about women that I've dated, let's just say this year, I've probably met 90% of them within a half a mile radius of different bars, restaurants. It's more nightlife, and I don't mean nightlife in terms of nightclubs. I just mean, cocktail bars, having dinner at the bar with a friend. You have to be social, you have to be able to approach somebody or strike up a conversation. That's something that I've managed to, find easy or develop that skill to the point where it doesn't really, it's not like a big obstacle. Aside from that, and I am trying to find more ways to do that without going out and drinking lately. So, health clubs or members clubs, something like I go to Soho House. That's a great place to meet women. It probably helps being in a city. I would imagine it's more difficult if you're in a rural area. Then I'd probably be in rely more on the dating apps. But I would say in 2025, I've spent probably about 3-4 weeks on dating apps.
Nice.
That's all. Yeah.
Nice.
And I will delete them for a while. I always find that the people that I meet in person, I have a better connection with, or at least there's no risk, I've gone on dating app dates where you think, if I'd met you at a bar, I never would have asked for your number.
Right.
Yeah. And now here we are, which can be it's just annoying because it's a waste of time. It's a waste of money. And, as much as it's good to be honest and upfront, it's still not socially acceptable to arrive somewhere and go, I'm actually not very attracted to you.
Never mind.
Bye.
Sorry.
You still have to you still have to go for at least one drink with them.
Right.
So yeah, it can just be a bit of a bummer, but it's a deliberate effort for sure. It really is. And it helps if you can approach people. It helps if you don't mind going to more nightlife situations, wine bars, anything like that. Because I think that going to, cooking classes or dance classes or whatever kind of thing, it's good. But if you do that mostly to meet women, it's not a great strategy because you're going to be investing weeks and weeks into learning a skill, and that's not the focus. Whereas people do go out to bars literally to meet romantic partners. It still happens. If you're enjoying this podcast, then you will love my weekly newsletter, The Gentleman's Digest. Now, I hate promotional emails as much as you do, which is why with my newsletter, I do things differently. This is more like a personal diary entry that I sit down and write and send to you on Sundays only. Inside, you will find insights, recommendations, reflections, and challenges to help you live a more gentlemanly life. You can become a reader today by signing up using the link in the description. What's the approach been for you? Is it mostly dating apps?
It's mostly been apps, but then it's mostly been, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and we have specific congregations out here that are actually catered towards people in different age demographics that are unmarried. And so a lot of times it's going to church with a congregation that's people in their mid-30s to 40s and kind of meeting people that way, or even just getting plugged in with different friend groups or social groups and then expanding things out that way. And so, yeah, I'm out in the suburbs and culture out here is a little bit different. And so a lot of times it'll be run clubs or going to play pickleball or golf with friends or things like that. And then meeting people when you're doing that or going to house parties where it's game nights and those types of things.
What are some traits that you would say are a non-negotiable for you at this point in your life?
So I think it's important to acknowledge that, and this is taken for granted, but I do think that it needs to actually be expressed. There has to be attraction there, there has to be the physical connection and the attraction in order for somebody to even be in the arena and for it to be a desire to start pursuing something else. And then obviously beyond that, because that's just kind of what gets you in the door, the thing that I'm looking the most for is loyalty. Somebody who's not going to see whether it's her own failings as something that's insurmountable, as long as she's willing to work on them, and somebody who's going to perceive me that same way, who's going to trust that I'm somebody who wants to be better and is working on being better and brings a lot of good things to the table, but it's not just this kind of like disposable, discardable, or selfish or risk adverse. Like for a relationship to work, there has to be, there's risk. You have to sacrifice certain things. And for me, it's non-negotiable to be with somebody who's willing to embrace that.
I think somebody who doesn't just see you as an option that they may jump ship from, rather than somebody that they are committed to, a cheerleader for you, will stand by you.
Yeah. And who's willing to take enough risk with me to trust that I will see that in her as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because I don't want to juggle options for the rest of my life. I want to be with somebody and build something with somebody.
Of course. I mean, if I even add up, and I'm sure you've had a similar experience of, the dating life that you've had since your divorce, if you add up all of the hours that you would spend, the money that you would spend, this is probably the dumbest thing about dating apps, which I hate, is even if you don't really have an investment emotionally, you're still thinking about, what shall I say? What did they say? What did they mean by that? Some people are terrible at communicating, so you're kind of second guessing it. I think that's the thing that I look for really early on, is good communication. And I get it. Not everybody is a good texter. That's fine. That's why I like to hop on the phone. But yeah, that's going to play out massively in the ability to have conflict, difficult conversations, how they handle being upset. You don't want somebody that they don't talk to you for 2 weeks and you don't even know what you've done wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Do you find that the opposite sex and attraction is a big motivator for a lot of men when it comes to dressing well?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually one of the things that I've found has made dating significantly easier because, okay, if I walk up to a woman and I compliment her on something that she's wearing, and I can do it in a way that articulates some level of awareness of what she's wearing, where it's like, oh, those high-waisted jeans look really good on you, or something where it's not just like, oh, you're pretty, there's some level of knowledge, and then they see me and they see that I put effort and intention into the way that I dress, then it just makes it so easy to open up a conversation. It makes it so easy for them to kind of light up and actually want to engage. And so I've learned from my own experience, and obviously I've seen this from a lot of my clients' perspective or from a lot of other guys, that yes, there's it's a good motivator to want to dress better. And it's also a really good tool when you do start to dress better to actually make your dating life significantly easier. So it's a yes on both.
Yeah, there's such a difference, you're right, between just saying, oh, you look hot, and then, something specific. If you don't have to know a lot about women's style. I think there's a lot of crossover for them to tell, oh, this guy is not just being a creep. This guy actually appreciates my outfit. Would that be a non-negotiable for you, that she presents well?
That's a good question. So this is one of the terms that I'm kind of working through, and I think I'm different. I would imagine that you're like this. I think I'm different from most men. I don't think Ryan Mickler would be like this at all. But there was one of the girls that I was dating about a year ago, and she had her own kind of taste and stuff. But even just the way that her home was and everything else, there was no overlap. There was this huge gap between the way that we were. And to me, it felt like there was no, I think the term that I want to use with this is aesthetic intimacy, because if you know how somebody gets to their aesthetic and what they're thinking and what they're trying to express by it and what it is that they're evoking and the emotions and everything that go into it, and then that aligns with what you're doing. And again, I totally recognize that for 90% of guys, this is not going to be the case, and that's fine. But for me, yes, there needs to be a good mix on that aesthetic intimacy that we can align in these different areas. So I wouldn't say it's entirely non-negotiable, but I've been surprised at how important it has been to me now that I am back in the dating pool, for sure.
Yeah, it's very important to me. And
yeah.
I find that at first they love it, and I'll even go as far as to, if I'm actually committed to somebody, I'll buy them clothes. I really enjoy doing that. And they love it at first, but I think that over time it can feel like a lot of pressure to live up to. But maybe that's just because it's not them. maybe it wasn't, the right person for me in the end. Because I'm not, super demanding. I just like a sundress and some cowgirl boots or some high heels. It's like,
aesthetic.
it's pretty simple, really. It's pretty simple. But yeah, I mean, I also would say that I hold myself to the standard that I expect. So it's not like I'm being hypocritical wearing sweatpants and wanting you to wear a ball gown every day. It's kind of on the same level.
I see this more from a parenting perspective than I do from a dating perspective.
Okay.
So I've got 6 girls and 1 son. Wow. He's 11. And he's at the age, it was super easy. All of my kids looked fantastic when they were little because my wife and I had that aesthetic, alignment, and we dressed the kids great, and like everything was fine. As they get older, then they start to want to dress in their own way and inject their own identity and express themselves in their own way. And it's been really good for me as a dad to teach my son principles about the way that he dresses and even hold him to some standards, like what I have expectations of when he goes to school, or how that's different when we go to church, or how that's different when we go to maybe a particular family event. But he's going to wear stuff that I don't love. Like, he's all about video games and graphic t-shirts related to that. And that's not my vibe, but it's been really good to learn how to teach the principles and then let him kind of like embrace those on his own and then express himself on his own with those as well. And then I'm doing that with my daughters. And that's really the approach that I take more so with dating in that kind of aesthetic alignment. Is not that I need one particular style, because I don't. Like, I can appreciate the sundress and the cowgirl stuff. I could appreciate really kind of like the East Coast prep WASP girls, like the California skater, like all of it. Like, I can find aesthetic value in all of it. And honestly, this is even how I am as a coach. Like, my clients, they dress so differently because I'm teaching them how to think about it on their own rather than just giving them my ideas. But as long as she's thinking about it and is deliberate about it, is expressive with it, and has fun with it, then I can enjoy it, and we can find common ground there.
It's going to be interesting with your son as he grows older and his taste matures and he starts having his own money and he starts making those purchases. I was once in the Ralph Lauren store in Chicago, and they have a tiny kids section, kids room. And I walk in there, and there's this probably about 7-year-old kid sat on the sofa in a double-breasted pinstripe suit, tie, and like club collar shirt. And at first, my initial reaction was like, oh, it's my son in the future. But then I thought, actually, no, this is kind of ridiculous. I don't actually want that.
No, that's not the world we live in. Maybe he is in some like enclave where that's the world, but that's certainly not the world that I live in. My kids ride around on electric scooters and play soccer and, play video games. Like, they don't need double-breasted suits for that stuff.
No, and I'm very glad that my parents actually aren't into style. And I'm glad, because I think it was something that was really fun for me to kind of explore by myself and my childhood. Having said that, my dad would really grill me if we were going to like play golf and my shirt would have to be tucked in.
Yeah.
Or if we're going somewhere, you can't wear graphic t-shirts, you can't wear football shirts. So actually, yeah, I would say he instilled like the right level of, you've got to look respectful, but he also wasn't, I'd never had a blazer or a suit till I was 16, I would say. Yeah.
No, that sounds like that's the right balance for sure then. Where, yes, there are environments where there are expectations and we meet those, but it doesn't mean we go overboard, and it doesn't mean we hyperfixate on this stuff either.
Yeah. I think golf is one arena where the standard of dressing has just declined so much. Right? I mean, you see guys just wearing, I saw a guy the other day wearing Chicago Bulls shorts and like a t-shirt untucked, and basically, they're golf shoes, but they look like sneakers. Right. And you just think, what happened? What happened here?
Well, and there's so much room for personality and everything else to still be in there. Like, I think some of my favorite golf fits were what Michael Jordan wore in the mid 90s. And that is not stereotypical golf attire at all. Like, he was playing with things, but it wasn't just sloppy and synthetic, which is where most stuff has gone now.
What's your opinion on the whole synthetic performance fabric takeover?
I hate it. I don't even like to wear it in the gym because I'm even like adverse to the health aspects of it and the microplastics and all of that. But the cling and sheen that you get visually. Like nothing drapes, nothing moves. It makes like it holds in all the wrong places. It doesn't look good on anybody. And one of the easiest upgrades that guys can make to their style is like just ditch all the synthetics and go back to wearing cotton, wool, and linen.
Yeah. I see that happening in certain subcultures, as you say, of people that are avoiding microplastics now. The polyester's kind of been one of the last pennies to drop for people. But I don't know how popular that's going to become in the mainstream. I think ultimately there's this idea that you wear them for comfort. I went and tried. I felt like it was my duty to go and let's go to Lululemon and let's try on these ABC pants. Let's try on these plastic shirts. And I thought they were horrible. I felt like I was wearing I was wearing a tent or something, you know, just like that plasticky kind of feel.
They don't breathe.
Yeah.
No, it's not comfortable.
What's your opinion on authenticity being something that is true to your story and your heritage versus something that you just genuinely feel good? To give you an example, and I don't want to prejudice your answer here, when I bought my first pair of cowboy boots, I've never felt so good in a pair of shoes. They just felt like me. They just made me feel very confident, and I started to style them with cowboy cut jeans, but then I'd wear an Oxford shirt. I'd always leave it unbuttoned. I'd wear a striped tie or a knit tie, and then a tweed jacket or like a double-breasted jacket with the gold buttons. And that just became like a signature look for me for a period of time.
That's cool.
Now, that's completely like anachronistic to my whole upbringing, everything that I was, would say is naturally my story. But it just felt good. So what's your opinion on that?
So I think there's trade-offs that come with that. And there's never a right or a wrong. It's just a what's more effective or less effective, and what are the trade-offs that you're willing to make. Because one of the main things that I teach my guys is I use a term, I call it extegrity. We've got integrity, like do your actions align with your values? And the concept of extegrity is, does how you represent yourself on the outside align with who you are on the inside? And the three aspects to that are, is it authentic? Like, do you feel like yourself? The second one is it articulate? So are you communicating to the people around you through your visual presentation in a way that they understand? And then the last one is it aesthetic? Does it actually look good? And the balance between, do I like it? Does it feel authentic? And is it articulate? Does it actually work within my tribes or my different people that I work with? This is where a lot of times we can get some tension that exists within there, and I think the cowboy boots are a great example. Ironically, I've never met anybody who's like a more strict gatekeeper of their clothing than like blue collar rugged guys. If you're not a cowboy, you do not get to wear the boots or wear the hat or things like that. And that's very different if you're in Texas versus if you're in rural Utah versus if you're in downtown Chicago, right? Because how much are you expected to actually align with that group and be articulate as far as expressing that within that particular group?
That's a great point. Yeah.
Right? So
because
there's
I never see anybody in Chicago wear them, so it's like obviously a style thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you were to dress that way and be in some small town 5 hours outside of Dallas, then that's going to be perceived very differently than it would in Chicago or in Florence or in New York or somewhere else, where nobody expects you to actually be wearing those in the intended manner in which they were created. Right? And so it's a matter of knowing how much you want to focus on, I feel great in this, and sometimes that'll come at the cost of the relationships that I have with people. And for some guys, especially guys that are a little bit more individualistic, guys that fit more into my style archetype of like the rake, and they're a little bit more rebellious and stuff like that, that's totally worth it. It is liberating and fun and expressive to focus more on authentic and less on conformist and being articulate. Whereas for some other guys, it's like, no, I hate that. And I don't like the attention that comes with that or the expectation that comes with it. And I would much rather downplay it a little bit and dress in a way that's a little bit safer, even if it doesn't feel totally expressive. And that's part of what finding your own style is even knowing how you want to hold that tension and which way you want to lean. And if that changes depending on, are you at the gym versus out on a date versus changes in any of these other environments, because it isn't even stagnant within a particular man. That can change depending on the environments in which we find ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Just before we carry on with the conversation, here's something I bet you can relate to. As a man interested in improving yourself, you've probably realized how hard it can be to meet like-minded people that are on the same path. And that's why I started the Gentleman's Institution, a private community of modern gentlemen. We have members meeting up in person all over the world and forging the types of friendships that men need. There's also an online community where I host 2 weekly group calls, and there's an exclusive library of video courses to help you on your journey. You can join today for just $1 by clicking the link in the description or going to gent-z.com. I would say I probably fit into that rake archetype, and probably as well because of what I do. Maybe you relate to this as well. It's like you want to, if you play it safe all of the time, you're not a great business card for the possibilities of style. It's like being a bodybuilder. You know, you might want to hire the guy who's super muscular as the trainer, even though you don't want to be necessarily his aesthetic, because he's like an extreme example of what's possible. And I just find it fun, man. Like,
right?
I love wearing that in New York City, and there's nobody else wearing it. It's like, okay, that's cool. I think also coming back to the kind of costume and the culture element of it, if I wore that with a plaid shirt and a hat, then it's cosplay. Then that's costume.
Then it feels like it's now gone too far. Yeah.
Yeah. If I wear it with the Oxford shirt and a tie, that weird juxtaposition probably feels like the two sides of my personality aligned, because wearing an Oxford shirt and a tie and then tan chinos and then Weejuns, loafers, it's a little bit bland. That's a little bit preppy. It's not really me. Yeah. I need something with a little bit more balls to it. I need something that's kind of exciting and a little bit subversive in a way.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. You're definitely a rake then, for sure.
Yeah. What are some of those items for you that just send like a really powerful message of when you put it on, it feels great?
So for me, I actually do a lot of accessories where it's rings and bracelets and stuff like that those are on fairly consistently. I like to do those a lot, especially because everything that I wear, I treat my accessories the way most guys treat tattoos, where it's something that I want to be reminded of with the symbolism of it every day, and it's reminders about things that are important to me or things like that. But if I think about my wardrobe and kind of like where those other things come into play, I probably have the most fun and the most expression in my jackets and outerwear, or in my shoes and my footwear. That's where things can get really fun. Like I had a lot of fun this last year I'm really excited about these. I had 2 like classic bomber style jackets made, but I actually had them made out of suiting materials. So one of them is this really good like burnt copper, kind of like rust red flannel, and then the other one is another flannel, but it's in this really small like puppy tooth that's a white on black. And so it's so fun to play with the juxtaposition of this very like traditionally rugged piece that you would expect in leather or in something that's maybe like a nylon or something else that's supposed to be a lot more like rough and tumble, but then we refine it up by making it out of suiting material instead. And so I really love kind of like playing with these different worlds and mixing things in those ways. That's where I get energized with what I'm wearing or what I'm putting on.
Yeah, again, that juxtaposition. I think part of my interest in that as well comes from when I was in my teenage years, late teens, early 20s. I was dressing in more like a gothic kind of style. I had long hair. So it was like very intentional to be shocked. I was in a band as well. So like I want people to look at the band and go, oh, that's those guys. So I although I don't want to send that message anymore, I'm definitely kind of aware of it. And I see the fun in it. I also was super obsessed with like the new romantic movement in the 80s and how people used clothing then. Look how people did it in the 50s with the generation gap. Now, when I look around, and I don't know what it's like where you are, but when I just look at the general people walking around on the street in a city, I just see a lot of like the same stuff, playing it safe, but playing it in a boring way. Like it's just the classic outfit is just some kind of technical fabric polo shirt, or maybe a dress shirt if they're more senior. Depends what industry they're in. Tech pants, Allbirds, or some kind of running shoe, backpack. And it's the same every single person. And then for women, it's kind of like the same as well. It's like baggy blue jeans, chunky sneakers, some kind of top. It's not like super feminine and appealing either.
Right. Yeah, I call it the uniform of apathy, because that's really what you're trying to convey, especially from a man's perspective. Because, and we're moving away from this, but we grew up in a culture in which it was dishonorable and effeminate. You get called gay or whatever else. Like you couldn't care about your clothing, and so the only appropriately masculine relationship to have with your clothing was indifference to it. And ironically, when you try that hard to look indifferent, you're giving yourself away that you actually care about it very deeply. But a lot of these guys do wear that uniform of apathy or that uniform of indifference, because we're just so conditioned to think that that's the only healthy relationship to have with it, and anything else it's pushing boundaries too much. It's too risky.
How much do you work with your guys on their grooming and hairstyles and things like that?
So not a ton when it comes to technical stuff. I usually get them figured out with like a good barber or somebody else. And, I'll talk to them about kind of like how well it works based on a few different variables. But the main thing that I do when it comes to grooming and that stuff is we talk about, my guys are multidimensional. I think most men are multidimensional, right? And I love how you talked about, the prep uniform, and what that comes across as is very one-dimensional, right? And so a lot of times, if we can create really good juxtaposition or multidimensionality by having our clothing project one image, and then maybe our grooming projects something that's a little bit contradictory or a little bit complementary to that, then it can provide more of that multidimensionality. And then you start to see yourself as, I'm not just stereotypically that, or I'm not just one-dimensionally this, but I'm a fully fleshed out main character in my own type of story. And so usually when we talk about grooming, hair, body language, tattoos, all of that stuff, we're talking about it as, how do we use this in the bigger picture of what it is you want to reinforce about your identity with yourself?
Yeah. How do you think about this personally as somebody that's filming yourself multiple times a week, as you say, like a walking business card? How would you kind of define your archetype and the message that you want to send?
So I always try to strike the balance of, I want to look like it's obvious that as soon as somebody, especially if I'm at like a local networking event, as soon as somebody finds out what I do, I want them to go, oh, that makes sense. Like, I would have picked that up from a mile away, right? But at the same time, I don't want to be so far outside their aesthetic window that they go, I would never hire him, because what if he tells me that I have to dress like he does, right? And so the goal for me, from a business perspective, is to look intentional and to represent like I do think about this stuff, to maintain my own personality and my own authenticity that comes with it, but then also to have enough fun with it, because I don't need a strict uniform. Like, I find myself, I can go back to my old punk rock days, or I can go towards something that's a little bit more like, I love how Western wear is having a moment right now, or like I can blend and bleed and play with all this type of stuff. And so then it becomes finding ways to still be anchored in my personality so that I feel like I'm not being a fake, but at the same time, I'm maybe one or two standard deviations away from wherever my audience is, so that it becomes aspirational, not just like totally way out in left field, like, who is this guy? And there's no way I would ever hire him to do anything for me.
Dressing like Karl Lagerfeld or something.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I use this example all the time with my guys. Like, I love George Washington, and I love everything about his style, the dignity, the credibility, the authority, the self-respect, but I'm not going to dress like this. Like, that's such a costume. So how do I find ways that represent dignity, credibility, self-respect, authority within my own life and with the people with whom I interact?
Yeah. I did want to move on a little bit to kind of your thoughts about male vulnerability and men going to therapy. What would you say is broadly your take and how that might differ to a lot of the advice that's out there at the moment?
Did you talk about this with Mickler?
Not directly, but we had a long
Okay.
conversation. So,
I am in a similar camp with Mickler and then another good buddy of ours, Jack Donovan. I do not like the term vulnerability, especially the way that it's used for men. I think better, similar words, but I think that better convey things would be humility or kind of like even exposure is a little bit different than vulnerability, because I think when we hyperfixate on this idea of being vulnerable, you start to convince men that, let me think about how I want to put this, that you can almost kind of traffic in that the way that we used to feel like you can traffic in strength, and that there aren't any risks or any costs or any payoffs, and the more vulnerable I can be, then the better man I'm going to be, or and there are risks and trade-offs. I think that people have to earn the right for their opinion to matter to you, and they can lose that right. And I think people have to earn the right to be able to see the depth of what some of your most intimate and challenging struggles are. I would say I'm different than a lot of guys. You go watch my Instagram, and I talk very openly and publicly about things that I'm working through or that I'm coming up against, or things that I'm trying to kind of struggle my way through on. I'm honest, but I'm not vulnerable, and that I'm not sharing all of my innermost fears or weaknesses or things like that. And so I think that and maybe it's being pedantic, but I do think that if you could take more of an approach of like, no, I want honesty and humility as opposed to vulnerability, that's a better relationship for men to have with that kind of a concept.
I like going into the meaning of the words sometimes, because I think that helps us understand exactly what we're saying. When you look at vulnerable, it comes from vulnus, means wound. So, yeah, showing our wounds and being rewarded for showing our wounds. In what way does that help us? In what way does that help the people that we're showing them to? I don't really know. I think transparency, honesty, sharing the journey as well, which is something that has definitely become more popular with social media. And I think that's what you do with your clips. You share the journey. I'm trying to do that more and more. I think that's also the difference between like what guys like you do, what I do, and somebody that's more like classic red pill, like an Andrew Tate, is there isn't a journey in a sense of progression. It's just, here are my accomplishments.
Yes,
you don't.
I'm the shaman at the top of the mountain, and I've arrived.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's also, as a content creator, it's something that you have to realize at some point and kind of get over, is that actually people don't want you to be the shaman at the top of the mountain. People want you to be on that journey. And I think I've always been aware of that just because I started making videos when I was 25. So I was aware that it would have been ridiculous to be like, well, I figured it all out, guys. So listen to me. And and I will frequently, express an opinion on a topic. And then I'll have experiences, and then my opinion may change, or my goal may change. I'll share that. Like I gave up alcohol for about 6 months, and I made a video explaining why I decided to give up alcohol. And now if people see me have a drink in a video, they're like, oh, I thought you gave up alcohol. But it's like, I went through that journey. My relationship with alcohol changed so that when I started drinking again, I'd learned my lesson, it is a different thing to me. So like the idea of going to drink again, when I drink now, it's not like I'm going back to what I was doing before. It's a totally different experience. And the same happens with dating. The same happens with clothing. The same happens with, literally everything, right? Literally, as long as you're improving, your awareness is going to change, and your opinion is going to change.
Well, and I love that. One, I love that you're doing it, because I think we need more people who are willing to do that. And then the other thing that I love, and I found this for myself, is that it's actually a really good filter for the type of audience that I want to have with me, because the type of people that want you to put yourself on the pedestal and have all the answers, and they want you up on there, there's this very kind of like rigid, dogmatic, if I just do everything right, then my life is going to be perfect, and A leads to B leads to C, and it's just totally like that. And life is way messier than that. I do believe in objective right and wrong and things like that. I don't think that everything is just subjective in shades of gray, but I do think that life is messier than just and a lot of red pill is this, if I do this, then she will respond that way. Or if I do this, a business will respond that way. Mm-hmm. And it's this kind of like, almost like if I, it's a false sense of control. If I'm alpha enough, then the world will bend itself to my will, and the world won't bend itself to your will. Mm-hmm. Right. But if you can show growth and change and about faces or repentance or all of these other things, it's like, yeah, dude, I totally planted that flag 2 years ago, and I fought and died on that hill. And then I realized I was way off on that. Like, that made sense from where I was, but I've learned a lot of other things since then. I think that filters for the right kind of people that aren't looking for the safety of dogmatism, but they're actually looking for real growth and real answers.
I think also, in a sense, people always watch content or they decide to work with you in some capacity, buy your product, because they want a little bit of what you've got, whether it's style, you're a fitness coach, they want that. But if you present that you've always had that and there has been no journey, then why would they believe that they can learn from you and go on that journey with you? If you go back to my oldest videos, I'm so embarrassed that they're still up there. I hope nobody goes and watches these after listening to it, but I'm 55 pounds heavier. I can barely speak articulately. The ideas were decent because I had researched it, but I mean, man, I barely had any clothes when I started doing these videos. You know, it really was like I almost stopped myself because I remember watching, at that time, it would have been like Parisian Gentleman and Gentleman's Gazette, and these guys have got these huge closets of custom suits. I have to give credit to my girlfriend at the time, actually, who said, you don't need the clothes. You can just talk about it. It's fine. And I realized, yeah, okay, I'll just give it a shot. So it's cool that if somebody is, I don't know, overweight or inarticulate, they can go back and go, oh yeah, James was too. That can change.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And that's what's so fun to see, is to get the opportunity to see that people can and do make those changes. Do you know Ryan McGinn? Are you familiar with him?
No, I don't think so.
I'll send you his info. He's been another really good buddy of mine. We met doing StyleCon stuff, and he's since moved away from style and does more of kind of like he runs a video agency and stuff like that. But he coined a term that I think is spot on for where we are right now. He says we're in a trust recession because you just see all these gurus that are falling apart and their lives are not what they presented them to be, and they're dealing with these failings that they had hidden and were in secret. And so I think that as we're moving away from the falseness of a lot of influencer culture, that the only people that are going to continue to have any sort of impact are the ones that have the humility to show growth and correct for mistakes before they're forced in the limelight or forcibly exposed by other people. Where it's just like, no, I'm the one who dropped the ball on that. Even if nobody else ever saw this, I'm going to tell you guys that I'm the one who dropped the ball on that.